Hello, hello. Anan Kantaria, to your seat. How's everybody doing? It's Friday. Get hyped. Welcome back for our closing plenary. We are so excited to close out the Global Festival of Ideas 2017, and I'm calling it that because this will be an annual event, so we'll hopefully be seeing you again somewhere in the world next year. Hello to our live stream audience. We are so excited to have you watching at globalfestivalofideas.org, and if you are on the web or tweeting and doing all those things you know you're supposed to do, make sure you tweet that link. Hashtag GF. Goodness, how is it that I still don't have that? GFI4SD and at Global Fest Ideas on Twitter. And you know all the rest. So, with that, we've got an action-packed afternoon because the closing plenary is about reflecting on the highlights from the many exciting discussions that have taken place over the past 3 days, but also looking forward to what needs to happen next, because this isn't just about what's happening in the room, it's about actually achieving this agenda for the best possible future. So we'll be hearing from those who have led and participated in the sessions across the program on how to turn ideas into action. We'll have a final update from the 2030 Hive Mind folks and hear how you all did with the game. And then we'll be hearing from some inspirational young people. We're all young at heart, but we have some actual young people here to lead us into the future. So with that, our speakers are all going to be talking about how in their sessions they saw ideas turn into action and how we can all learn from that. So I have with me leads and participants from our various sessions. First up is Elizabeth Stewart, who many of you know, but I'll introduce her again. She's head of growth, poverty, and inequality at ODI. And you led the sessions on poverty and inequality, Liz. So can you tell us the most important points that were raised and sort of what needs to happen next?
Sure. So let me start by saying a huge thank you to everyone who put in so much work making the track work. I'm sure all the track leads will want to thank their respective helpers, but it was the speakers, it was the volunteers, it was the people running around with mics, it was the people making Slido work. So thank you so much to all of those people first. Let me start by saying that rather than ending by saying that. You know what the setup was. We had a couple of plenaries, we had a couple of policy simulations, and we had a World Cafe style event and lightning talks. And I think it was great to see how the different formats, the same concept, but worked across different formats, how that delivered different outcomes. I found that really, really interesting. I'm going to give you, they're not key messages or even, I wouldn't even make so bold as to call them key takeaways. I'm going to give you 3 things that struck me as being insightful and interesting that came up across those 6 different sessions in the day 1 track. And I'm going to precede it by a general point, which is how incredibly timely it is to be discussing, inequality, but also particularly issues around globalization and disillusionment, and really trying to unpack the drivers of that disillusionment for reasons that I don't need to go into here, but that you will all understand why that's such a salient conversation to be having right now. So for my kind of the things that struck me as being kind of interesting and also inspiring, first of all, on inequality, the big thing that's kept coming out time and time again is that it's a really complex concept to talk about. It's an intellectually complex, difficult subject. There's different sorts of inequality, and then there's relative inequality and absolute inequality. And it's really hard to explain to people really what you're talking about, and then to get cut through with getting people to care about it. So the first thing that we need to do is to start, and it's not helped by the fact that, of course, the SDG on inequality on Goal 10, it's not about eliminating inequality, it's about reducing it. Again, it's a little bit nebulous, and it's a little bit difficult to get hold of. What do you mean by reducing? So the first thing we need to do, the next kind of on our to-do list going forward on inequality, is defining, discussing, and agreeing at the national level what is an acceptable level of inequality in your context. And it's going to vary from country to country, and maybe it's going to vary between different parts of a country. There may be subnational differences, but this needs to be a national conversation. What is the right acceptable level of inequality for your country? And that's an urgent job to be done. But I think there's also something about recasting the inequality conversation. Reducing inequalities are negative. It's hard to get people inspired about getting rid of overcoming a negative. And it's going to be important going forward to find more positive ways to talk about what are we trying to do. What we're trying to do is, you know, increase women's economic empowerment, getting more women in the labour market, for instance. That's a positive vision of what we're trying to do with this debate. So the second thing that struck me may not sound terribly profound to some of you, but I feel like I've spent quite a lot of my career watching how multinational and international negotiations happen. And during one of the policy simulations, the group that were role-playing the elites decided to do something quite different, something that you don't normally see in these big kind of conversations and negotiations. They went over and spontaneously, without anyone asking them to, they went over and sought out the group who were playing the community level actors, and they had a debate and a discussion and a dialogue, and they even tried to synchronize what they were both going to be asking for. And it really struck me that this sort of very simple thing of actually genuinely going to find out what somebody who you have no understanding of what they want and need and what their lives look like, actually engaging with them. And if we could take forward that sense of, if not collaboration, then at least curiosity about what someone else's view and perspective might be, that would be very important. And then finally, I mean, we were very conscious that what we didn't want to do was to cast this track as a sort of an attack on globalization, as a sort of anti-globalization per se space. What we wanted to do was think about managing that globalization, genuinely starting to think about solutions for making sure that globalization benefits everyone rather than just benefiting the few and the elite. And I was very struck by a colleague from Plan International in Egypt who actually said that globalization has improved the condition of women in her country, in Egypt. And again, for me, that was a reminder that let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. Let's instead think about how we can manage and trammel this process and make it work for people. I'll stop there, except to once again thank everyone who put in so much work to make this track a success.
That was officially my almost wardrobe malfunction. Next up, Mathilde Bouillet, Associate on the SDG Delivery Team at WRI. You led the sessions on sustainability. How will you turn the ideas you discussed into action?
Thank you. So the second day of the festival was very rich and underlined very clearly that we can't have sustained growth anymore without environmental sustainability, simply because we would need 4 or 5 Earths to sustain 9.5 billion of people with the same current consumption and production patterns. And it's also pretty clear that environmental sustainability provides better growth and better lives. You know, renewables now can provide cheaper, more reliable access to energy. That's why in 2013, the clean energy capacity generation exceeded that of fossil fuels. And we're seeing a lot of very interesting trends in that direction. Circular economy is experiencing a boom. Agroecology and permaculture are definitely having a higher productivity rate than business as usual production system. So the real question is how we scale up and mainstream these leading experiences so that we are on track to remain under the 2 degrees target. So for answering to this question, 2 key messages came out very clearly throughout the day. The first message is that we need much clearer and stronger signals from governments to make sure that all actors are engaging on this sustainable development track. So it means that governments have a very strong responsibility to develop, to build national consensus around a new definition of growth, new measure of growth, and vision of countries' development. And unfortunately, there are only a few countries that are showing the way. Finland was a great example. They have adopted a 2050 strategy, society's commitment for Finland. Finland we want. That is a policy framework for all actors, civil societies, ministries, agencies. Mexico is also developing a strategy to implement in an integrated way the climate agenda and the SDGs. Samoa little island, very vulnerable to climate change, has also a very long-term strategy based on the new definition of growth. Metrics matter. As Kuminadu clearly said, we can't rely anymore only on GDP. And there are a little bunch of countries that are adopting new indicators of progress. France, 2 years ago, adopting new wealth indicators that also consider inequalities and environmental capital. And so these initiatives have really to scale up. Second, countries have to set very clear and ambitious targets on key drivers for sustainability, so for energy efficiency, renewable energy, recycling. All these signals are essential for business actors. And there was also a big ask for stronger regulation that are crucial to overcome key barriers to the development of green economy, so the short-term barriers of capital, the lack of trust in technologies. It's essential to have regulation to provide an even playing field for all competitors and to address this focus on short term. The second key message was that all actors have to transform their practices and their behaviors to make this shift happen. So governments have to understand that they can't drive transformational change if they don't transform their governance frameworks. So they have to depart away from governance-centered policy making to build really inclusive decision-making processes that not only consult civil society but work with all the segments of the societies to develop the policies. They have also to depart from very siloed approach to strengthen policy integration and embed these agendas, the climate and the SDGs agendas that have been primarily regarded as environmental agendas, into all policies. Business have to invent a new way to deliver goods and services so that they enhance resource efficiency and change consumer expectations. So we are seeing a lot of interesting new models like collaborative economy that challenge the assumption that consumers have to own their good. You know, consumers are now ready to share the use of goods, and the consumers have to change their habits. And it was very interesting to see that responsible consumption is something that is overlooked, and sometimes consumers are thinking ahead and needs more labels, more transparent labels. There was a big act in that direction. We also start a quick discussion on shifting diet. So some people clearly say that if you change the habits of the high beef consumers, you can have very positive impact on our environmental footprint. So you see the agenda is quite big for the coming years. I will say only just a very quick last word, and it's for us, organizers. We have seriously to address the issue of visa for speakers from developing countries. 2 speakers invited for the second day were denied their visa. And because apparently they didn't provide, according to the embassy, proof that they would come back, while their business model was to develop local companies. So we need to really think through, and developed countries can't on one side ask for supporting expertise from the South and developing North-South cooperation, and the other side not provide visa to forward-thinking actors that can give great real-life examples for such conferences. So policy integration, again, between development, sustainable development and migration. Thank you.
And Mathilde, would you just repeat the statistic at the beginning that you said? We need how many planets?
4, 5.
To do what?
Sorry?
We need 4 or 5 planets to
sustain 9.5 billion people. And even though the NASA discovered that we can all migrate, in 200 years on one of the 7 planets they have just found out,
Yeah,
This,
Mars may be an option.
Far
but
too late.
this is going to be my soapbox and crusade. I feel like we're so inside baseball sometimes for the Americans in the room. That just means we hear these stats all the time. And the weird sort of cognitive dissonance, to use Kumi's term yesterday, of this is that we're the people that are most alarmed by this, but we don't sound alarmed when we hear it, right? Because we're like, yeah, of course, we need 4 or 5 planets to sustain 9.5 billion people. That is crazy. Every time we hear it, we should be like, oh my God, and we should tweet it, and we should reinforce it, because that's not acceptable, right? And that's what gets this narrative to change, because people believe what they hear, and if we don't say it enough because we think it's obvious, then it's not actually the truth. I'm done now. And with that, sorry, it's like, and with that, on to Emmanuel Lechuze, Director of Data Pop Alliance. You were responsible for the disruptor sessions, which we're really excited to hear about. So what did you discuss, and what do you need to do to make the change that you talked about happen?
Thank you. So first of all, day 3 on disruptors was co-organized with the World Food Programme. So thank you for their participation in day 3, and thanks to all the teams at ODI in particular that have been working very hard to make this happen, and also the volunteers. There were many volunteers that made this happen. So thank you to all of those involved. So day 3 was indeed on disruptors. So shocks. To put it simply. So I was not everywhere, so I can't do a summary of all the sessions. But we tried in creating the program, the agenda. We tried to cover as many types of shocks as possible and look at the trade-offs between different shocks. So from macroeconomic shocks to civil war, conflict, natural shocks. Some of which are related to climate change, but nevertheless, so-called natural shocks. The one-liner would be that we looked at technology and data as sensors and sources of disruption and adaptation. So if you think of it as in a sort of 2x2 matrix, you have sources and sensors, and then of disruption and adaptation, and we're working in this sort of 2x2 matrix, and so trying to sort of make the best of technology and data. The starting point is, of course, the realization from the economic theory and just observation of life that shocks are a great impediment to progress, not just in the aftermath of a shock, but also the very notion of being vulnerable leads to suboptimal investment strategies in many ways, where you try to minimize the risk as opposed to maximizing the expected return, because you just can't afford to be hit by a shock or to lose your assets. So this was very clear in the framework of the SDGs, that for the SDGs to have any chance of being achieved, or for progress toward the SDGs, there had to be some sense of a greater focus on smoothing or creating a greater adaptation and mitigation strategies in the face of risks and uncertainty in general. So in one session, we looked at all the ways in which new data, new technology could improve the prediction, the understanding of shocks, the monitoring, the mitigation strategies, and I think there's especially in terms of the social fabric of societies and how societies are able to cope, and what would be interventions to increase the ability of societies and communities to respond to shocks. I think there's a really big research agenda there. We also looked a lot at challenges in the sense of the political economy challenges, the methodological challenges. Of course, people say, well, what about sample bias in big data, for instance? Not everybody has a cell phone, etc. Also, institutional, legal barriers and obstacles that are often there for a good reason. The fact that we cannot share cell phone data widely in the open there are very good reasons for these data to be sort of protected, locked. But then the question becomes, how do we shape the future of governance of the data and through data? talking about governance, there was an interesting discussion about the future, let's say, of like global governance, and in the face of risks and shocks and high rates of transformation, with blockchain technology, for instance, the notion of having potentially different identities in the blockchain, and the implication that this has for the governance model of the world. One of my questions is whether representative governments are going to be around in 20, 50 years. They're actually pretty young historically. It's not clear at all that the governance model, the prevailing governance model, is going to be one of representative democracies. And then last, specifically, I thought there was an interesting discussion also about the end of work. So technology as a disruptor, technology as taking people's job, AI, automation, etc. So how are we going to respond to that? There was, well, I sort of discussed the case of and the limits of any form of basic universal income, and whether technology could actually enable that, pinpoint to where the poor are, or if it's universal, what are actually the ways in which we can test whether it's a good idea or not to have basic universal income. So in the end, last word, the sort of like takeaway is to try and move towards a sort of like a new social contract or construct, so through and towards greater democratization of data and technology. So the notion at heart that democracy, even if it's not representative democracy, but democracy and participation is key to shaping the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Emmanuel. Now we have Hilary Ogbonna, who is the Regional Coordinator for Africa and the Arab States at the UN SDG Action Campaign. And also I heard you were the voice of the universe for the lobby. Yes, so we have him live and in person. So, Hilary, how do we ensure that this agenda is achieved in tandem at all levels? So city, municipal, national, regional, global. How do we do that, and how do we share best practices across all those levels?
Thank you very much, and I would want to also add my voice in saying that this has been an incredible experience, and we are all privileged to have been part of all this, whether as organizers, whether as partners, or whether as participants. I think we all should count ourselves lucky that we are part of these inaugural sessions, and I hope that whatever we take from here, exactly from the questions that have just been asked, how we are able to operationalize and activate all that has happened here in the past 3 days would really go a long way in stating that really that people are at the heart of the SDGs. And to be direct to your question about what's next, how do we achieve this? We already have a year and a half, almost 2 years gone down the line. In order not to repeat the mistakes of the MDGs, how do we exactly move forward at the different multi-levels of governance? And I would talk about these multi-levels of governance, but I wouldn't forget the reason why we are all here, which is the people, which we should actually add as another level of governance. Now, in terms of the levels of governance that are here, city, municipal, national, regional, and global, I would want to start with national, which is the parties to the Agenda 2030 agreement, and that is our national government. You look at the framework of what we call sustainable development today. The SDGs are not new. They've always been with us. They've been with us in different frames, in different forms, and today what you have as Agenda 2030 is a culmination of almost 40 decades of UN conferences on climate change, on environment, on sustainable development, and on human rights. And that is what we know today as Agenda 2030. So because they have always been with us, how do we look back and say, how do we continue on what we have been doing, but based on this new framework? The first is national development strategies. And this is expressly mentioned in the Agenda 2030 declaration. All the national development strategies would need to reflect the sustainable development goals. reflect them in such a way that they are implementable based on the structures, governance and institutional structures we have on ground in different countries at all levels, whether it be the democracy that he referred to, the populist government, whether it is a government based on any other value. It may not be democracy, but at the end of the day, national development strategies are key to moving forward some of the ideas we have discussed today. And how do we do this? We do this through the process of integration, through the process of policy domestication. There are policies in different countries across the globe, whether it is on education, whether it is on health, whether it is on agriculture. How do we align them to the different targets and different indicators of the SDGs? This will be key moving forward. And then at municipal and city level, we have different constitutional requirements for all of these levels of governance to operate. In countries, in federal states like Germany, like Nigeria, like the United States, each of these government bodies have different roles they play and different mandates that they have. How do we locate the SDGs in some of their mandates, in some of the, whether you call it exclusive list or whether you call it inclusive list or whether you call it residual list, whichever list you have, how do we ensure that we have some of these in the strategies at the municipal and city level? I had a good fortune of meeting with a representative of the city of Berlin yesterday, and just like the city of Bonn, a lot of them are already talking about how they localize the SDGs, and localization in this sense is how do local authorities come up with sustainable programs that not only involve the people, but also empower the local business, empower women groups, empower citizens groups to be able to be part and parcel of these development strategies. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Hillary. He is the voice of God here. And now on to Becky Malay from the Philippines Rural Reconstruction Movement and the Global Call to Action Against Poverty, GCAP, as we all know. As a participant in these sessions, Becky, how do you think we revolutionize the way we mobilize around this agenda to ensure that everyone, every single person is involved and no one is left behind?
Thank you very much. First, I'd like to thank everybody for coming to this session, because I think it is important for us to distill the lessons that we've learned or new ideas that we've formed in our heads, or maybe it's time to act on what we have to do, right? Which is sustainable development. I will answer your question from a very old playbook, but hoping to have new methods. I have been an activist for a long, long time and doing sustainable rural, district, and democratization programs all over the country. At the same time, I have been doing a lot of work at the global level, at the regional level. So it's not just me. It is a whole movement of people that are left behind that I'm talking about. So the old playbook says we should arouse, okay? First, arouse them, arouse the people. First, know who these people are. Are they the young people, the rural women, urban poor, LGBTI, the indigenous peoples? Identify them who are left behind in this agenda. So how do you arouse? Of course, it is so easy. They know what their conditions are. Okay? The second point, organize. How do you organize? It is linking all these struggles together. It is introducing people to each other. It is defining the way forward. It is revolutionizing the agenda. Okay? And then the last is mobilize. Mobilize is moving together, obviously, but please let their voices be heard. I don't want to be attending another global festival of ideas where NGOs and INGOs are dominating the discussions, and those who are left behind are actually left behind. They're not there. we have to make them visible. We have to campaign so that everyone is talking about their own conditions and building bridges of solidarity and moving towards an agenda for sustainable development. And it is the future that they want, okay? And by building this solidarity, I think all of us have to have a long-term agenda. And therefore, it is a long way for the struggle. So we have to dare to struggle. And we also have to dare to win, as Mao Zedong says.
Thank you so much, Becky. And finally, we turn to Namla Maniki Mangaliso, Director of the African Monitor. As a panelist in the session on citizen-generated data, could you reflect on how we build accountability around the SDGs when it's a multi-stakeholder universal agenda? So who's responsible?
Right. Thank you so much for the opportunity, and hi, everyone. I know, right? Like you say hi to people and they're just mean and they don't say hi back. So a few quick things. I think thinking about what is exciting in the conversations we were having around citizen-generated data, the first thing that comes to mind that was a permeating thought was the idea that citizen-generated data potentially is one of the most revolutionary tools that you could use to put power back in the hands of people. I think that the last speaker talked about let the voices be heard, and that's the first reason it's potentially a revolutionary tool, because the very mere fact that you create the space for people's voices to be heard, I think already is an empowering process, and I think we were agreeing in these sessions that there's a level of empowerment that communities get from just simply getting the platforms to speak. And so whether we're hearing case studies from Father JP in Nigeria or South America, where they were doing My World, but we've got tangible experiences of where people are really empowered through just speaking and airing their voices. But beyond that personal empowerment that people get, this is one of those powerful tools that actually improves governance, because suddenly it creates the relationship between duty bearers and citizens, and so you improve accountability relationships. So the way this happens is that during citizen-generated data, where citizens are participating on what's working and what's not working in their communities, the most effective processes that do that actually link citizens to the people that are responsible for delivery, so that there is ongoing engagement about what needs to be done to actually improve things. And that leads to the third point that came through, which was, under what conditions do citizens actually willingly engage in these processes? And one of the most fundamental things is that citizens must be able to identify the clear results that are going to come out of them participating in data processes. In other words, how is my life going to be changed by the process I'm involved in? And that's where your accountability relationships at the local level come in, but also that's where the advocacy, the policy advocacy and the legislative advocacy happens at the national and regional and global levels. And so the very good examples of the work that we did in Africa in order to engage with the African Union and the Africa Group, but also My World, where in fact it was being quoted within the negotiation processes at the United Nations, are real demonstrations that citizens' voices, experiences and aspirations can actually effectively influence policies. Now, the conditions that need to exist in order for citizens to participate are several. And so we were looking, for instance, at situations where states are repressive, making it impossible for citizens to actually engage and civil society to engage, versus situations where there was a legislative environment through a constitutional mandate that actually allows citizens to engage and to participate, supported by a proper policy framework. But in order to be able to build these systems continuously, two important things need to happen. Citizens at the local level, whether it's subnational or national, need to have the institutional mechanisms and forums through which to engage. In other words, it's not enough that they are engaging amongst themselves without actually having those institutionalized systems that allow them to engage with power. But also there needs to be international pressure or global pressure, or rather, let's say, demand for citizen-generated data. So when we're thinking about all of these reviews, that there's demand, that it's not enough to just
Es reicht nicht, Statistiken zu haben.
Citizens engaged, what are they saying, what's working and what's not working. In the 30 seconds that I have left, I think citizen-generated data, if we're saying that the SDGs about leaving no one behind, they are potentially one of the most important tools through which you can make sure that all voices count and that the right things count, because people themselves know what's working and what's not working.
Please, thank you again to all our panelists. It's not often a conference recap is this cool, in my opinion. So really, thank you very much. And we will, thank you. And now it is time to hear our final 2030 Hive Mind update. And I have exciting news. What goals have we already achieved? We have achieved number 5, gender equality. Yes, let's do it. I like that person, whoever it was. Gender equality, which actually, hilariously, was our first call to action from Allah on day 1. So well done. Good listening. Goal number 3, good health, also achieved. And today, just today, we achieved goal number 9. Anybody know what that is? Innovation in industry and infrastructure. Woo! And literally moments ago, Ishbel ran over to my spot and wrote in all caps, "We have reached climate action goal!" exclamation. That is a huge deal. And the best part about it is the 2 goals that we heard most from our speakers about that would have an impact across the entire agenda were gender equality and climate action, and you have achieved them, and that makes an enormous difference not just for those 2 goals, but for every single one of the 17 SDGs. And if it can happen here, it can happen in real life. So with that, please welcome for the official update, Ishbel Matheson. One more time.
What we said, what was it, almost 13 years ago. We were all together in this room. And I said to you then that 2030 Hive Mind would work if you considered it yours, if you made it yours. And I also said the only way you get to understand it is by playing it. So huge thanks from us to you, because you really took up our SDG challenge and played this game. Thank you to you. So, hundreds of you played it across the conference, and we learned a huge amount, not just about playing the game, but also about the SDGs in general. So in our fictional country, we started, as I said, at a really kind of dire state of development, and over the years that we've played together, we have succeeded in achieving, in actual fact, this shows you how live the game is, because this was done just before we reached the climate action threshold. So again, we reached 4 of the goals. We didn't quite do on 3 of them, but you know what? And the thing that we really wanted to think about with this goal was the linkages between the game and the real world. That also just feels like the real world. So we've made progress, we've achieved some of them, but we just need to keep going. And I think probably that's a great message to take away from a conference which is about attaining momentum on the SDGs. So just to think about a little bit how we actually did it, we did it by actually great communication. You know, one of the things behind the game, we said, you can't just do it on your own. You have to get political momentum, political will behind the goals. And look, just the enthusiasm of, you know, people tweeting and following us on social media, amazing, from Jennifer. High fives all round, Plan International. That enthusiasm and commitment in the real world are also the things that we're going to need to see this ambitious SDG agenda achieved. And yep, in the real world, we also played the game. So thank you very much for all of you guys, some of whom are up on screen, who
went into those deep dives on our gaming tables, argued, made teams. Again, that was absolutely fabulous to see. And I think, again, in the real world, that is what it's going to take, isn't it? It's those unexpected alliances. It's meeting those people that you never knew who also share the same interests to deliver this really extraordinary and historic SDG agenda. So just finally, a lot of you have said to me, how do we take on 2030 Hive Mind? So the game doesn't just end here. We deliberately developed it so that it's open source technology, which means you can make it yours. And if you're not quite sure how to do that, we've got our game developers here, Simon and Sam. I'm sure many of you have met them across the course of the conference. Do you want to just put up your hands? They have been excellent advocates and, you know, very patiently explained to us how this wonderful game actually plays. And I think the other thing, as we've learned through the course of the days that we've played it, you know, we didn't get it all right on day one, but we learned and we moved forward and we made great progress. And again, that's a great message for us all as advocates for the SDG agenda to take forward. But I also said right at the very beginning, there would be recognition for those super users, the people who top our impact index. So we have in Oscar style a special mysterious envelope which has been sealed with the names of the winners in it. It's not Emma Stone in that envelope, by the way, just in case you're wondering.
So our 2030 Hive Mind winners, and I hear Ishbel might have
a prize.
Don't do a Faye Dunaway here, Ishbel. Our #1 winner, Paul Scriptoria. Where are you, Paul? Come on down.
Come on down.
Woo.
I'll just take that.
#2 winner, Lucy Marie. Woo! And our #3 winner, Michaela, who doesn't need a last name, apparently. Oh, Michaela, come on. And we have a little prize for you, Ishbel. Do you care to tell us what the prize is?
So, a lot of you also asked about the name of the game, Hive Mind. And when we were sitting and thinking about games, we thought about 2030 Challenge and so on. But a lot of you have said in this conference, we need something fresh and different. And we thought, you know, bees, they work together. They have great thing at the end of it. It's honey, very sweet golden honey. And so that's our prize to our top Hive Mind winners, some special UN honey.
What does UN honey mean, though? Aren't there a UN bees? Is this a rumor?
There are.
It's true. UN bees made this honey for you guys. So, huge thank you. And actually, since we have you up here, can we just get a quick reflection? What is the thing that you've enjoyed the most? What's the takeaway for all of us? And especially those few people who I know were sort of struggling to get into the game. What was the learning, the joy of it? Go.
I think it was just amazing to see it work, because I was actually very skeptical at the beginning that things would align, and it seemed like there were a lot of different interests at play and things were kind of getting pulled in different directions, but then somehow it all happened.
The magic happened, right? Go ahead.
Yeah, I think for me the most exciting thing was to see how everybody who was in the beginning a little bit skeptical about how it would work, about whether enough people would interact, all came together at the game tables to figure out how it worked together. We're not sure, okay, does this make sense to invest here or do this? So we all kind of got together and figured it out together. So I think that was my favorite part about it.
Thank you, Lucy.
Actually, I wasn't even here yesterday, so I'm quite surprised to be standing up here. So apparently I did something right. I don't know which. I just picked the policy that had good impact on all goals, but not a negative impact. Maybe that's a good strategy, I don't know.
Well, it's a good strategy to keep in it, right? Regardless. Thank you so much. So big hand. Big hand also, obviously, to everybody who put together the game. Oh, is Simon going to high five? I was just going to say, you get pins. These are going to be collector's items. And the game lives on, yes? So it's open source. Go to where? To FIC.li. FIC stands for free ice cream. Sorry? Speak up. I can't hear. Oh, congratulations, yes. And the Twitter feed for you guys is @ItsFIC, so @ITSFIC. And we'll keep hearing more about the wonderful game. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And woohoo. I'm really proud of you guys. Can I just say that? Because I, too, was somewhat skeptical on day one. But now we're going to talk about the future. And you've heard from every single speaker, I think, at our entire event that young people are the key to making this happen. So we are very excited to have 3 live and in-person young people up here to talk to us. And the first of those is Natalie Roby-Tingo, an accountability advocate at Restless Development, who's going to chat with us for a little bit. Please welcome Natalie.
Hello, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm really humbled to be here today. I would like to take this opportunity to sincerely thank the organizers and conveners of this special occasion, and a special thank you to everyone who worked around the clock to ensure that I got to born to speak to you today. So my name is Natalie Roby-Tingo. I am 24 years old from rural Kenya. And I'm a social economist, a human rights activist, founder of Msichana Empowerment Courier, and an accountability advocate with Restless Development. This is a youth-led accountability program with 21 leaders across 7 countries in Africa and the UK, equipping these young women and men with technical skills needed to monitor the implementation of the global goals. And we have national accountability framework networks where we are collecting and generating data to seek social accountability and on key issues for our local context, and generating national accountability frameworks to demand for implementation. For example, in Kenya, my team and I are working on specifically Goal 5, where we are seeking accountability on gender equality and the empowerment of all women and girls. But before I get into my speech, I would like to show a short video introducing myself and the issues I've been working on recently.
My name is Natalie Roby. I am 24 years old from rural Kenya. I grew up in a very small community. When I got to 9-10 years, like any other girl, I was to undergo circumcision. My community literally worships girl circumcision. It is something that we identify with so closely. At that time, I was very happy. I was looking forward to it. Once you're cut, you become a woman. But my parents took me outside the community to go and study. I learned that I was not going to get circumcised. It was a very confusing time for me. Do I identify myself as a girl? Do I identify myself as a woman? Do I identify myself as what? I wish somebody had told me that, you know what, you're actually being saved from something life-threatening. It was around 2011 when there was a lot of talk against circumcision. So I started researching. I saw horrible things. I'm thinking, why do we do this to our girls? Why would you put a girl through such a thing for them to become a woman? I was angry. And I was like, you know what? If there's someone who's supposed to change this, it could be me. The moment a girl is cut, it means it's an end to education. You married almost immediately. Education has given me a voice to speak about things that are not just in the community. If every other girl was empowered with an education, then all of us will be able to stand for what is right. I'm really excited about our youth center. We're not only just asking the youth to stop the cut, we are meaningfully engaging them to realize their full potential. They now have someone who can walk the journey with them, someone to tell you, you know what, it's actually possible for you, no matter what your story is, no matter what the situation is, to move past it. My name is Natalie Roby, and I'm a global citizen.
Thank you so much. I would like to tell you a story here today, a story about a baby girl called Roby. She is born on the 3rd of March 2017 to a small village in southwestern Kenya. By 2027, Roby will undergo circumcision, which involves cutting her clitoris in Libya with unsterilized blades, knives, without anesthesia. This practice is known as female genital mutilation. She will experience excruciating pain, but is not allowed to cry because it's a show of cowardice. This could literally mean an end to her life due to excessive bleeding. She'll drop out of school to get married soon after bearing children. Today, Robbie represents the more than 200 million girls and women living the lifelong effects of the cut. My experience as a young woman and that of Robbie are synonymous with millions of others globally. We are here in Bonn to discuss new ideas and solutions to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. But the promise of a better world is not possible without gender equality, or the 1.8 billion young people globally making sure that we keep that promise. In Kenya alone, 42% of the population are 15 years or below. This is a huge historic opportunity. If we do not engage and utilize these young women and men, we will simply fail to achieve the global goals. I have seen the power of young people calling out the government and duty bearers on their responsibility to citizens for quality and affordable education for all, access to proper healthcare services, conservation of the environment, and keeping of peace. We, the young people, by virtue of being members of our community and country, we have the right to seek for accountability. Restless Development's youth accountability model has allowed young people like Eva, 16-year-old from rural Tanzania, along with her classmates, to call on her government to take more action in providing clean water, essential services to young girls like her in their community. Eva's story was read out by President Obama at the United Nations meeting, and her petition has since gained over 175,000 signatures. Eva and her classmates' determination to hold their leaders to account and the willingness to change their communities for the better is just one example of many worldwide where young people are standing up and taking action to deliver on the global goals. Restless Development youth-led data-driven accountability model has allowed me to collect my own data and hold leaders to account over specifically Goal 5 and Target 5.3, where my team of two others and I chose this goal because issues of female genital mutilation, child marriage, and other harmful traditional practices that fall under Goal 5 are a violation of fundamental human rights. They prevent millions of girls and young women worldwide from having a shot at life. From the ages of 9 and 11, young girls are held back from accessing their true potential. Secondly, by achieving an end to female genital mutilation, child marriage, we are set to achieve up to 8 major global goals. No poverty, an end to hunger, good health and well-being, quality, affordable education, gender equality, economic growth, reduced inequality, and SDG 16 on peace, just, and strong institutions. Aside from gender equality being a basic human right, empowering young women and ensuring that they start life on an equal playing field is the smartest decision we can make if we are hoping to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. I'm here because, like you, I believe we can achieve this. Have a just, peaceful, and more inclusive world. Governments, United Nations system need to do more to meaningfully include young people, and in particular young women, within the 2030 agenda as equal partners and leaders for change. This needs to happen across all forms of decision-making processes, from the global to the local level. My experience as an accountability advocate proved that young people just like me, just like Robbie, are willing and equipped to take a leading role in ensuring that we successfully meet the ambition and reach the targets outlined in the Sustainable Development Goals. Other young people across the world and I are not just sitting around and watch injustice, war, and corruption, and even oppression of women and girls. We are standing up and raising our voice. We are building a better world, and everyone is coming with us. Today, I implore you to look inside yourself and recognize that change starts with you, change starts with me, and change starts with all of us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Natalie. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And now we're going to hear from Etta Hamar, UNSDG Young Leader and Founder Director of Undress Runways. Welcome, Etta.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is Etta. I was born in Reykjavik in Iceland, and I left Reykjavik when I was 5 years old to set off on a huge journey, a journey around the world on a boat with my mum and my stepdad. I lived on this boat for 3 years, sailing from island to island, country to country. We set off from Rome and headed down the coast of West Africa. My bedroom was a triangular bed with walls situated at the bow of the boat, and on one side I had teddies that lined the wall, and on the other side a video player where I watched The Lion King. Every day was a good day to watch The Lion King. When sailing down the coast of Africa, I remember being in the cockpit and waves would come crashing over us. It was exhilarating. This was a real adventure. We were setting off on an exploration from Rome all the way to Australia. Our vessel crossed the Atlantic Ocean in 25 days, and from there we cruised the Caribbean islands and up the coast of North America and back to New Orleans, and then we sailed across the Pacific Ocean and through the Pacific Islands. Nearly every week we docked at a new marina and I had to make new friends. I'd make friends from kids from other boats, make friends with old couples, young couples, retired people, cats, dogs, anyone who would be my friend. We once invited a cat over for a sleepover, but the cat ended up overboard, so we didn't do animal sleepovers again, but the cat was fine. After 5 years of travelling, we arrived in Australia. At this stage, I was 10 years old, and I had been to 5 different schools, including a few attempts at homeschooling. And I had quite an odd start to life, but I now see how lucky I was to experience the natural wonders of the earth and gain a deep respect for cultures, people, and the power of nature. The rest of my growing up was in Australia, in the bush amongst spiders the size of your hand, kangaroos in the backyard, and plenty of sunshine. In 2010, in my last year of university, I decided to run a fashion show. With no formal fashion education or knowledge of the fashion industry, I was waist deep in everything from casting models, deciding hairstyles, finding designers, and promoting the event in my home city of Brisbane. As you can imagine, I had little idea what I was doing, but with a great team alongside me, it was nevertheless a success. But there was something that didn't feel quite right about the whole experience. I learnt a lot about the fashion world, and I learnt also about the dark underbelly of this very glamorous industry. I learnt of child labour, human slavery, pesticide poisoning on cotton farms, and polluted lakes and garment districts. I learned of the enormous quantities of fashion waste that was deposited into landfill, and saw parts of our consumerist society through another lens: fashion addicts, retail therapy, and the blind purchasing of cheap clothing. For such a beautiful, creative, and exciting industry, this is not what I wanted to discover. The next year, I co-founded an organisation called Undress Runways. Undress celebrates sustainable designers and showcases their designs in an annual runway show. We focus on the positive, the progress, and the innovation in the fashion industry. We have produced shows in Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, and hope to bring the show to Europe this year. It's all about creating sustainable consumption and production in the fashion industry. Today, fashion is the second dirtiest industry in the world, second to oil. I'm not okay with that, and I want to see change. Today, a significant portion of our clothes are still produced unethically and unsustainably. So what do we need to do? We not only need to support designers who produce ethically and use organic fibres or more sustainable fibres and have transparency in their supply chain, but we also need to choose clothes that are of good quality and are long-lasting. Sustainable fashion strongly connects to Goal 12, sustainable consumption and production. Vivienne Westwood has a famous quote, which is, "Buy less, choose well, and make it last." This is a brilliant mantra to live by. When I look across the 17 goals, I see many great mantras to live by. Together, they're the ultimate blueprint for a better world. And while each goal is very different, they all connect and they all need each other to be achieved. Gender equality being at the forefront. Over the last 3 days, we've listened to some incredible speakers. We heard from AB from Plan International about 6-year-old girls who consider themselves second-class citizens in comparison to boys, when just 1 year earlier, at the age of 5, these girls were over the moon about being a girl. Paul Okumu urged us to challenge power, and I quote, "The power of the people to challenge the people in power." And we heard from Kumi, who is such an inspirational speaker and a man of many facts. And he said, for every $1 made in the global economy, 93 cents goes to the top 1%. So where to from here? After 6 years of producing sustainable fashion runway shows, I've been doing the same thing over and over each year, urging people to support sustainable fashion designers who use ethical manufacturing. On Monday, AB from Plan International reminded us of an Einstein quote that said, if you do the same thing over and over again and expect a different result, it's the definition of insanity. So we've made a lot of progress in raising awareness, but I really want to see a total transformation in the fashion industry, create a revolution. And it took me 6 years to realise that perhaps we needed to look at it a different way. And now, Undress is going to do something very different. So how does one make it easier for the everyday person to reduce clothing waste, invest in quality, ethically manufactured clothes, and simply to buy less? The solution has to be convenient and it has to be economical. So I believe the way to change a global system of fast fashion consumption is through sharing. And at first it seems too simple, too soft, unsophisticated, and a bit fluffy. But sharing is powerful and transformative. Sharing doesn't create waste. Sharing puts the value back into the longevity and the quality of our clothes. And sharing builds a more connected society. The future is about sharing, and it's already happening. We've seen the rise of Uber and Airbnb, and soon we'll live in a world where we hardly have to own many things because we can borrow other people's things while they're not using them. Cars, pets, Wi-Fi, bikes, tools, and now clothing. Technology and compassion are the key to being able to achieve the SDGs, whether it's improved data and reporting systems, the creation of tools that connects us to sustainable economies, transparency in industries where people deserve to and need to know what's going on, technology to improve access to clean water and solar energy, the development of products that assist people with disability to join in on every aspect of society, and online technology to connect each and every one of us, not only in this room, but from all around the globe. In a couple of weeks, Undress will be launching a platform where you can share your clothes and borrow from others. In Australia, 6,000 kilos of clothing waste is generated every 10 minutes. Cheap, fast fashion cannot be the future. I challenge you going forward today to start sharing in your daily life. Share to reduce waste, share to buy less, and share to create a connected, compassionate society. When we share, we are all richer, socially, environmentally, and economically. Use technology to aid the work you're doing for the SDGs. Good technology can change people's habits without them even realizing and without them even knowing they're being sustainable. Finally, next time you buy something, ask yourself, will you wear this at least 30 times? And if not, borrow something instead. As Kumi said, the planet does not need saving. If we mess it up, we won't be here, but the planet still will be. So we need a mutually interdependent relationship with nature. And that's making sure that this doesn't happen. So let's go forward, test out new approaches, be brave, go bold, and let's make Agenda 2030 a reality. Thank you.
And Etta, did I misunderstand, or do we owe you a congratulations on your launch round of applause? I didn't want to interrupt you, but I'm like, guys, that's a big deal. That is being the change, so thank you. And now, finally, we're going to hear from Emmy Mahmood, a UNHCR ambassador, one of BBC's 100 most inspirational women, and a World Poetry Slam champion. Emmy?
Hi, everyone. Hi. I like this trend. Kind of wakes me up. No, okay. I'll just start. So, my name is Imtithal. I'm called Emmy. I grew up in the US and I was born in Sudan. And today I want to talk to you a little bit about what happened where I'm from, where my family's from, I guess, Darfur. And I've been back several times, and I'll touch on that a little bit. So I was about 10 years old. I'm 23 now. I was 10 years old when I first learned the word genocide. It was 2003, and my people were being brutally attacked because of their race. Hundreds of thousands murdered, millions displaced, our nation torn apart at the hands of its own government. My parents immediately began speaking out against the crisis, but I didn't really understand it except for the fact that it was destroying them. So one day, I walked in on my mother crying, and I asked her why so many people in our family were dying. I don't remember the words she chose to explain genocide to her 10-year-old daughter, but I remember the feeling. We felt completely alone, as if no one could hear us, as if we were essentially invisible. And that's when I wrote my first poem about Darfur. I wrote poetry to convince people to see and hear us. But it wasn't until years later, when I was about 19, that I understood the conflict in a new way. That's the thing about war. It's always revealing itself in new ways. It isn't always experienced as a bomb or a shot heard around the world. It's the people you love. So today, I want to talk to you about Muhammad. Muhammad had a gorgeous mind. He captured the speed of light in the palm of his hands, and he learned to bend time. At less than a meter tall, he was a human race car zipping through entire sections of the Sahara in a matter of moments. Little boys are incredibly aerodynamic. Once they start running, no one can catch them. Muhammad learned to run before he knew what he was running from. One day, I had to compose one of those phone calls that every parent, or in my case, significantly older sibling, hates to make. And in my mind, it went a little something like this. Mama, Baba, how many of these crazy kids were you planning to have? Because we just lost the 3-year-old. In one of those paradoxical moments of time, I was taking a nap in the war zone, and my mother came and woke me and said, Emmy, your brother just ran outside looking for you. I couldn't catch him, he was too fast for me. First thing I thought was, this is a problem. In the first 48 hours after a child goes missing, the chances of finding them alive decrease by 50%. In a war zone, that number drops significantly. So after the first 20 minutes of searching house to house, neighbor to neighbor, family member to family member, and not finding my brother, my stress level skyrocketed. Our town was full of mercenaries, merchants, soldiers, guns, civilians, everything you could possibly imagine. So after going to the last house and not finding my brother, my mind went numb. The first hour passed and the heat alone was unbearable. The second hour and everyone was looking for him. By the third hour, the combinations and permutations of everywhere he could possibly be were endless. Imagine trying to psychoanalyze a 3-year-old when every possibility is staring you in the face. There are warplanes, curfews approaching, and everybody around you has that look in their eyes, like they're remembering every child that died the exact same way. Every bomb or bullet or person that took them. My village cried twice for Muhammad. Once when we lost him, and again when we found him, and we did find him. There's this 4-lane road that separates my township from the next, and every day war trucks, aid vehicles, all kinds of traffic are just speeding through that street. I want to take a moment to address that feeling that I always get when I talk about what happened. That feeling that we all have, especially if you are a parent or a sibling or you've ever loved a 3-year-old. The things that were running through my mind: is he hungry? Is he tired? Did someone take him? Are they hurting him? My family was lucky because for us that feeling ended, and for so many others that feeling never ends. And I still get, when I think about those 3 hours, I'll never forget what my brother said when I crossed the street and I found him alive. He said, "Emmy, I found you. I was looking everywhere for you." I didn't know whether to cry or to yell or to, I don't know, laugh. I just held him. Fast forward to last year at my graduation, and my brothers Abdullah and Muhammad came dressed as minions. And I said to them, "Why are you minions?" They said, "Because we're your minions." This is what life looks like outside the war. This is my family. And I say that because we get these moments of peace where it almost all seems so distant. But when I think about my brother Muhammad and what he was willing to do to find me, I think of all the kids we don't find and the ones we find too late. One second. It's not supposed to be sound. No sound. I hear sound. Sorry, guys. Okay, I heard something. Nope, there's sound. Yeah. I heard it. No sound. Well, anyway, the reason they were minions is I asked my mom. It was a very traditional graduation too, because it was our university's 300 years old. And I say to my mom, "Why are they minions?" And she said, "I'm letting them make their own decisions." Okay, I think it's probably okay.
Are we good?
Yeah? Good?
I think so.
Well, anyway.
Yeah, let's.
So I think about my brother's, what he was willing to do, and, you know, it makes me think of all the kids we don't find and the ones we find too late. It's cool.
You're good.
Yeah, we're good?
No sound. Can I get a wave? Are we good?
Are you alive?
Yeah, they've advanced it.
Thank you. I saw a boy make his final stand today, face down in a bed of sand, body prone, bent, broken like the waves. His chest was not moving. His heart did not beat. Everything around him was suspended in the varied turmoil of land and water, push and pull, as if each were trying to reclaim him. It is like that sometimes when I see the corpse of a stranger, that kind of death from the outside of someone else's final breath. It makes the air stop, the ocean turn more slowly, the earth a cradle, a cemetery, a monument, a stone, like a dead boy resting in the sand. Loss is deeply personal, and yet we see it on a global scale almost every day. When this happens, we become desensitized. We start to see people as numbers, and it doesn't help when we're constantly trying to quantify suffering as if it makes it make more sense somehow, easier to swallow. I think we are a generation that's increasingly having our empathy marred by the exposure that we get to all of these things. And I think more and more, you're less likely to engage with suffering on a personal level and more likely to see it on your screen or your newsfeed. Putting people back behind the numbers and reversing that process is incredibly difficult. And this is Amna. I met her in Lesbos when I went with the UNHCR. She lost her husband after they made the journey across the Mediterranean. They had to leave his wheelchair because it doesn't fit on the boats. And when they got to the shore, the boat capsized, and despite all the attempts to resuscitate him, he didn't make it. She lost everything when they left Syria, and then she lost it again. And there are people who constantly lose things once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, and they still make that journey. My challenge, I guess all of our challenge really, is to try to think of the individual. This poem is called Head Over Heels. They hand me the microphone. As my shoulders sink under the weight of this stress, the woman says the 1 millionth refugee just left South Sudan. Can you comment? I feel my feet rock back and forth on the heels my mother bought, begging the question, do we stay or is it safer to choose flight? My mind echoes through the numbers. 1 million gone, 400,000 dead in Darfur, 2 million displaced, and this lump takes over my throat as if each of those bodies just found a grave right here in my esophagus. Our once country, all north and south and east and west, so restless the Nile couldn't hold us together, and you asked me to summarize. They talk about the numbers as if this isn't still happening, as if 500,000 didn't just die in Syria, as if 3,000 aren't still making their final stand at the bottom of the Mediterranean, as if there aren't entire volumes full of fact sheets about our genocides, and now they want me to write one. Fact. We never talked over breakfast because the warplanes swallowed our voices. Fact. My grandfather didn't want to leave home, so he died in a war zone. Fact. A burning bush without God is just a fire. I measure the distance between what I know and what it's safe to say on a microphone. Do I talk about the violence, displacement? Do I mention the fear, how it's never as simple as what you see on TV, how there's weeks worth before the camera's on? Do I tell her about our bodies, how they are 60% water, but we still burn like driftwood, making fuel of our sacrifice? Do I tell her the men died first, mothers forced to watch the slaughter, that they came for our children, scattering them across the continent until our homes sank, that even castles sink at the bite of the bomb? Do I mention the elderly, our heroes, too weak to run, too expensive to shoot, how they would march them, hands raised, rifles at their backs into the fire, how their walking sticks kept the flames alive? It sounds too harsh for a bundle of wires and an audience to swallow, too relentless, like the valley that filled with the putrid smoke of our deaths. Is it better in verse? Can a stanza become a burial shroud? Will it sting less if I say it softly? Will the pain leave when the microphone does? If you don't see me cry, will you listen better? Why does every word feel as if I'm saying my last? 30 seconds for the soundbite, and now 3 minutes for the poem. My tongue goes dry, the same way we died, becoming ash without ever having been coal. I feel my left leg go numb, and I realize that I locked my knees, bracing for impact. I never wear shoes, I can't run in. I choose poetry because it's so visceral. Me personally, I'm an academic. I studied global health and science, but I write poetry, and I choose that as my medium to engage people, because when a person is standing in front of you, mind, body, and soul, saying, "Witness me," it's impossible not to become keenly aware of your own humanity. I believe that if somebody speaks to you politically, you're compelled to respond politically. If someone speaks to you academically, you're compelled to respond academically. If someone speaks to you with hate, you're compelled to respond with hate. But if somebody speaks to you as a human, you're compelled to respond with your humanity. I get bogged down with research a lot. I've been doing it for a very long time, and sometimes it's very hard to put people back behind the work that we do. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges we have going forward, to keep that empathy alive. The place that I saw it best demonstrated was in Lesbos, which is the last poem I'm going to share. I also wanted to say, when I say think about the individual, I don't mean the people that we see as victims, but I mean also yourself and your own positionality. Try to be more aware. I met a woman, her mother and her son, all under the subtle shade of a tent. 3 generations of one family held together in a morsel of time. The life of a refugee is counted in moments. In this moment, we were bird watching on Lesbos Island, the sun melting the clouds across our vision as the first bird spiraled brilliantly toward the Aegean shore. To go from bird watching to boat watching in Greece is to witness the world unfurl. I was told of days when the birds came in hordes, broken-winged and heaving, spilling forth 50 to 80 hatchlings at a time, each broken shell another person seeking rest. Box-figured crows, floating rubber albatrosses hug the horizon in the bitter cold. When an island becomes a door, who will answer? If enough eyes see a body in the water and no hands reach out to rescue her, did she really die? This time, the eyes came and the helping hands followed. Imagine rivers full of people carrying people on their backs. Imagine shores covered in footprints and wheelchair tracks. The passion it takes to swallow the wind, kiss the October sea, and meet the boats. I've seen how paperwork can divide families, separating mother and father with the stroke of a pen. How firm handshakes can unravel entire civilizations when the stage is big enough. If I had the power, I would have paper-maché'd those contracts, lined the ceilings with paper cup lights, painted the walls cerulean so even the smallest of palms could reach for the sky. I would have lined entire rooms with books and kitchens with the warmest pies. I would have built a camp that is a call to prayer where a person who's carried in can leave walking. I would have made a dignity back into the concrete oasis. This is what I saw on Lesbos Island. Because when a child is born in the context of war, this is how you unveil the world to them, how you unravel music to their ears. I've stood on both sides now, and I can say that in Lesbos, the cats are white with brown spots because the child's painting told me so. That life jacket bags are in style because a boy named Sahib showed me so. That a woman can all stand together and a village can all stand together when a woman wills it so. Safe passage begins with asking the questions no one will utter and becoming the answer no one could possibly imagine. So what I want to leave you with is we're in a global moment right now, not quite yet a movement. And I think that there are a lot of questions out there that we can answer. And that doesn't mean only on paper, but with our humanity. So what I want to leave you with is be more like Muhammad. go out there with that blind, I'm going to go find my sister, even though he was this tall in the middle of Sahara. Also, the future is here. Like, he's 7 right now, and you know, I'm hoping he won't remember most of the Trump administration. But we won't talk about that. What I will say is, my brother and a lot of the people that make that journey go out with no promise of tomorrow, with no guarantee of making it even 1 or 2 steps forward. When I think about what he did in those 3 hours to stay alive, when I think about what Amna did, or what my family did, or what a lot of people do every day to just make it to the halfway point where we can then reach out and reach back, I think that the least we can do is reach out. And that takes whatever form you want it to. The conflict that we see didn't happen overnight, it didn't happen in 1, 2 years, or a decade, and it wasn't one person. It's a lot of people doing a lot of messed up things to get us where we are. So it's going to take all hands on deck. It's going to take everything you can do. It's going to take every single person, every moment, and it's going to be a lot of sustained effort. It won't always feel exciting. It won't always feel like you're saving someone's life. It'll just feel like normal. It'll feel like life. But for those of us who need it the most, it'll feel like a life better than we could possibly imagine. Thank you.
You can stay standing for all 3 of our young people because we need them.
Thank you.
You guys are the best instructions followers ever, which gives me a lot of hope, I have to tell you. And thank you to all 3 of you for sharing with us today. And since we have you, I thought maybe we'd ask for one final quick reflection. We've talked a lot about action, right? So there's a lot of theory in this room and a lot of really smart people, but the question is what we actually do. And you ended on reaching out, but how do we do that? Because we saw even in the game what a struggle it was for people to collaborate and actually touch each other. So it would be awesome if you would extend that reflection one more step and tell us how we should do that reaching out.
Is this on? Hello. Oops. Okay. I understand that it's really difficult to go out into the ground. Like, you know, I don't expect everybody to go and be like, okay, I'm buying a ticket to Lesbos tomorrow, I'm going to go. The reality is, one of the most important things you can do is grow the safe spaces around here and reach out to the people that are already here. Because wherever you are, there are people who go unnoticed. And that sounds very vague, but to me, I've seen it in very visceral ways. I used to do a lot of volunteering in the refugee project at my university. And
which is it a secret?
No. Yale University. We had the Yale Refugee Project, and what we did is we tried to reach out to families. We were assigned a family, and what I realized there is that the more time we spent with them, I understood that they live in isolation. Because for a lot of people, after they leave the conflict, it's only the very start of the struggle. You know, oftentimes, if you ask people, especially the people who say, oh, there's too many refugees, there's too many this, there's too many that, there's too many poor people, or there's too many people who need food.
That's a thing people say.
I've heard it all from the US. But ask them, you know, do you actually know a refugee? Have you ever met one? Where are they? Like, because people will say, there's so many, and you say, have you met any? Yeah. Your job, I think, is to, well, you can take this upon yourself. I think it would be nice for all of us to be able to find the organizations that help people get acclimated to their new environments and find a thing that you're passionate about. For me, it's poetry and research, so I do both. Yeah. If I wasn't passionate about what I do, I don't think I would be able to really, I don't think if any of you weren't passionate about what you're doing, I don't think you would be here. I think it's incredibly compelling to have a lot of people come together and try to think about the future and moving forward, but understand that the future isn't something that is in the distance. It's something that happens step by step. To finish a day, you go hour by hour. So we have, what, a couple of hours, I don't know how many hours left in this day, and then the next day will pile on, and all of a sudden you'll be at the future. So I think everything that we do now and the steps that we take now to make the spaces around us safer for people who don't feel like they can engage. Oh yeah, and also engage politically. But to feel like they can't do that, it's really crucial. I think about the people that I know in the US, especially in Philadelphia, and that's where I'm from, and a lot of other places that are relocated, or you think that the battle is over for them, that, oh, they're safe now. It's only the start. So what I think you can do is not just reach out to them, but also reach out to the people who are your classmates or your colleagues, or the people who won't naturally come to an event like this, or who won't naturally want to find the people who need the most help.
And that's especially important for children too, right? Because we hear a lot about children who are coming to new countries, and that's an incredible struggle for them. And we don't think about that a lot of the time. I mean, it's hard enough to be a kid, period. And imagine coming into the situations that a lot of these young people are coming into. So reaching out in a proactive way and thinking not just about the nodes of connection to you, but the nodes of connection even beyond your network as well.
Especially, I think it's really crucial to bring more people into this kind of fold, because there's I think about a lot of my classmates, not everyone would immediately want to come to an event like this or think about
I don't know what you mean, Emmy. We're fun. And actually we are going to get thrown out of the conference center. So I want to make sure that we get a reflection.
Sorry, I talk a lot.
No, that's okay. We actually loved it. Did we not love it? Yes. And this entire conversation is about being heard. And I loved, Etta, that you said be brave, because I think exactly to the point Emmy was making, we struggle with that. We're sort of like, I'll do good up to and until the moment when it's hard for me, and I'm scared, because that's a challenge that I think all people face. And so I wonder for you, how can we be brave based on the things that you believe in, that you're seeing? And I was shocked, I mean, how do I not know this, that fashion is the second dirtiest industry behind oil, because fashion is about beauty. And is that why we allow it to happen? I don't know.
So I think. Yes, so first part about being brave. I read a book about courage, and it was interesting because all the people that we see as being brave, often that's their job, or that's natural to them, and they don't actually feel that brave doing it. I mean, I guess if you put that into context, figure out what you're good at and what you're passionate about, and go and do it fiercely, and it won't feel scary. It won't feel like you're being brave. I mean, if you're going to try and go and do something that you're not good at, or then it will feel scary and you won't do it. But yeah, like do what you feel comfortable in, and absolutely do it fiercely.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you.
Yeah.
And finally, Natalie, what is the call to action? What do we do next? What would make you proud of this room of people if they all went out and did it today?
Thank you so much. I think yesterday I was having a discussion with a few people, and one of the things I was telling them is that I'm tired of us just talking. I'm tired of us putting resources in where it doesn't work. I'm very passionate about girl child, especially in rural communities who don't have access to basic services that we all have. What if we diverted the resources that we used to have huge meetings and conferences, and instead invested them in programs that are happening at the grassroots? Because I'll give you an example of the end FGM and female genital movement in my country. There are so many young people who, and even other community members, who are using very little resources to go by in order to transform the community's mindset. Access to education, kids sit up to 6 in a small bench for them to listen to a teacher. But we can transform that. For me, it's about now moving from here and actually doing something about it. Just not talking and it's all fun, it's all interesting. We've had so many beautiful ideas, but we live here and it all maybe remains here, or we go and shelve it somewhere in our cabinets. I like what somebody said about the people who are affected being part of the discussion, because all of us here are technocrats, people who understand the language, who understand what SDGs are, but someone I know in the village who is a farmer doesn't understand what SDGs are, and they need to understand that. So it's about now going back, investing at the grassroots level and making those people, reaching out to them and telling them that these things affect you. And not having medicine in the hospital doesn't affect a rich person. It affects the person who at the end of the day doesn't have enough food. That's the person who's affected. So we should just stop talking and do something about it. So from here, I'm hoping we can go back and really go back into the communities that need this kind of discussion that we are talking about here.
And spread this message. Thank you very much. I love them. And I know Americans get accused of saying we love everything, but I feel like there are worse things we could be accused of. And in this case, it's absolutely true. And I also love that our conference organizers thought about bringing us to a close on this note, because it is hopeful, right? This is exactly what we need to see, and it's the SDGs in real action. So with that, I would love to welcome to the stage a man who needs no introduction at this point, Mitchell Toomey from a UN SDG Action Campaign.
I feel a little ashamed continuing to talk after that call to action, so I'll leave it very brief. And in fact, maybe I'll get you to act a little bit here. We'll do a Paula Kumu stand-up. That worked really well. Stand up if you've met somebody here that you're going to take action with, that you never met before. Thank you very much. Good night, everybody. No, just a couple more points. That's terrific, and it was a gamble to bring this crowd together, and we can't apologize for doing what we can. We have to do these things, but we have to also take the action. Coming here is no excuse for not acting. Coming here is the excuse for acting, and getting the case you need to go back and make what change you can. I do want to make sure that I thank our great partners, because they've had an instrumental effect on gathering all of you, not just speaking and getting presentations going, but reaching out to you, selectively making sure that the right minds got here. And I think we had a fantastic job. So first with ODI, an amazing set of partners. If we can get a round of applause for ODI, just with the game, the hive mind, and all the sessions, fantastic. And then our organizing partners, the City of Bonn and the CEPE, the Data Pop Alliance, Engagement Global, Plan International, the Salzburg Center, UNDP, World Food Program, and the World Resources Institute. Let's give them all a big hand too. You never know exactly how these things are going to come together, but I'm very pleased that you all stood up there, because I was nervous about that. But I think based on the excitement that Nadira has given us, can we all have a hand for Nadira as well? That's a tough assignment, and you handle it like a real champ. There's amazing, unsettling things happening right now about facts, right? We're hearing this facts and news, questioning these things. And even the economists now are talking about it. They're saying there's something new called narrative economics. And I suggest you Google that later, because I can't stop thinking about some of the work we're seeing. People don't believe facts. They believe the stories about the facts. And it's up to us to get a better story than the competing counter-narrative. And if you can tell a story of hope and hopefulness and action, you can bat down the stories of inaction and selfishness and uncertainty. It's all about confidence. You have the member states of all the UN member states behind you. We've got this space now. Finally, we have an international agreement that is by the people, for the people. This was a passionate exercise to build these goals and make sure that very early on we said, let's hack the process. Let's make sure that we find every moment in the negotiations where the people's voices can be inserted into the negotiations. And over time, these interventions became part of the negotiations. The people's voices mattered. And so we've got a complicated agenda to take care of, but this is a complicated world. And at least we're not kidding ourselves about how complicated it's going to be. So don't get discouraged. Lean on each other. Do everything you can. Do it in your own neighborhood. Find the person in your town that needs a little help. Because if we all do that, the theory of reciprocity tells us that if everyone does their part, it all comes together. So don't get disillusioned, take action, and thank you so much for attending this conference.
And welcome back to the stage, Elizabeth Stewart from ODI. Just keep clapping, you're good. Clap.
Thanks so much, everyone. And I'd like to echo Mitch's words of thank you. But first of all, I'd like to thank Mitch. Can we all have a big round of applause for Mitch? And all the rest of the UN SDG Action Campaign colleagues. I'm looking at Anand, but there's also so many different colleagues around the room and the volunteers who've worked with them. Repeating, please, can we have another round of applause for Nadira? And I'd like to thank ODI colleagues who've put so much work into this quite fantastic, unique, different festival of ideas. I think it's been a great mix of inspiration, innovation, policy discussion, research discussion, and game. I think what a fantastic model for bringing people together. And if we think that the SDG negotiating process gave us a new modality, maybe this should be a new modality for conferences. I think this is something we could want to, yeah, we'll clap for that as well. Thanks again. So I'd like to also echo this note of optimism. We've heard some quite amazing ideas in the last couple of days. We've heard about backcasting, whereby you work back from 2050 and figure out the policies that you need to put in place today. We've heard about trade-offs. We've heard about prioritization. Even more excitingly to me, we've heard about action that's already been started. So not just action, not just things that people, that governments, that civil society, that the private sector were already doing. This is new initiatives that have been spawned by the signing of the process of negotiating and the signing of the SDGs. So things like Paul Akumu and Kumi Naidu's Africans Rising grouping, for instance. Things like the Voices of the Poor project, whereby we're actually going to find out what the poorest and marginalized people think and want and need and prioritize. Things like the Big Data Initiative in Sri Lanka and the German Sustainable Development Plan as well. These are all new initiatives. So let's take that note of optimism and action forward, but I'm also going to repeat this, the warning of the need for urgency. When political leaders come into office, we often talk about the first 100 days, right? The new agenda that they need to get started to kind of showcase what they're going to be doing. The SDGs are a universal agenda. 100 days clearly isn't enough, but 1,000 days we think should be enough to start to see the significant, substantive action that is really going to change the course of the future direction on development and on sustainability, on reacting to and limiting climate change. 1,000 days from the start of the SDGs is in the middle of September next year. We're already halfway through. At ODI, we did some very interesting quantitative work where we calculated the cost of delay of starting action. And we worked out that if countries haven't started to implement the policies they need to put in place to leave no one behind by the end of this 1,000 days, so if they haven't started to implement these policies by September next year, leave no one behind isn't going to be achievable in it to the full degree that we're looking for it to be achieved. And if leave no one behind isn't achieved, then the SDG agenda isn't going to be achieved. So I don't want to leave you on a pessimistic note. I want this to be a note of realism, a note of urgency, that let's take some of the actions that have already started and let's turn this into systematic change, but let's do it quickly. Thanks very much again.
Thank you so much. And now, because we really are at the coolest conference ever, we're going to have a little reflection in photos and videos. So Go for it, Tina.
The United Nations is an organization with goals of peace and sustainable development around the world. Their mission is huge, but we're breaking it down in 2 minutes.
We're finally here. It's been a long ride, and I'm very happy to see this crowd and in this location.
So I'm pleased to have a great conference. Thank you.
Their mission is huge.
Whenever the news is on lately, I start needing some sort of reinforcements, some hot chocolates.
But we're breaking it down in 2 minutes. 17 sustainable development goals. Let's get to them, cause the more you know. Look, in some corners of the world today, people are living on $1 a day. Hey, that's not how it ought to be. So go one, eliminate poverty, and go two.
Young people who want to donate small amounts of money to charity causes which are going to support this agenda.
We are going to make an SDG wheel and take a pretty fantastic photo that'll be tweetable for life.
This is the wheel of the world. This is the wheel of the world. This is the wheel of the young people. So we got together, all of us, and find solutions.
And getting people the health care that they need in. Learning in school are the hard to go for. Education opens up minds and doors. Goal number 5 is empower girls and women. Goal number 5 is empower girls and women. Goal number 5 is empower girls and women.
It's gender equality that gets me out of bed every morning.
So they can have the same rights that men are given. Number 6, people need water that's clean. Poor sanitation can spread disease. Carbon-free energy is goal number 7. And how to achieve it is a question that's pressing. But if we put our minds together and work hard, we can find a solution, I'm guessing.
The more we communicate and we make the people aware of the agenda, the more the governments will be accountable and will ensure that it's implemented. And the more we communicate, we will harvest for partnerships. This agenda cannot be implemented without very strong partnerships with the private sector, with the NGOs. So having a festival of ideas that inspire how to reach out is the right thing to do.
17 sustainable development goals to improve life all around the globe. Protecting human health and the environment.
If people hear music and if it's really the right song, this unique song, then the hearts resonates, the minds open up, and then people can really feel that this new agenda is something for them as well.
City construction. 12, well, that's sustainable consumption. So what we use matches up with production. Goal 13 calls for urgent action to combat climate change, because we know what's happening.
We do see so many places around the world where climate change and where climate action is needed, and it cuts across issues around employment, the change in livelihoods, poverty. It addresses issues of migration. It addresses issues of conflict. So I think given the realities of the world that we're in today, really taking on Goal 13 is so essential.
14, protect life under seas. 15, protect life on land. Goal 16 is for peace and justice. All over the planet, they're in high demand.
Africans supporting Africans, and of course, we welcome solidarity from people elsewhere, but if we don't stand for each other, we should not expect or deserve others to stand for us.
And the final goal, number 17, is the critical factor, the heart of the machine. It's to strengthen the way we achieve these goals of sustainable development around the globe. Yo, 17 sustainable development goals to improve life all around the globe. Protecting human health and the environment. Whatever bed we make, we gon' have to lie in it.
For instance, it's very, very colorful, and I think we need color. We need positive messages, and we need positive feelings for the agenda to bring it to the people.
I was like, is there dance footage? We're in serious trouble. Oh my goodness, I love it. Thank you for all of this. We have to do a few more rounds of applause for a couple key players. Again, our UN SDG Action team and ODI co-organizing partners have been brilliant, so please, huge round of applause for their entire team. And I personally have to give a big shout out to Anand and Rebecca, who are the co-leads on producing this entire conference. They have been my personal handlers and mental health defenders, and they have just been brilliant and put together a wonderful event. Yes, absolutely. Giveaway. We love them. We also love the volunteers that were here from Bonn, but in addition, the entire staff. We had a brilliant staff here at the World Conference Center. These poor guys in the booth who from moment to moment are making magic happen. Just every single person involved in making this work. The folks on the Rhine Fantasy who were not ready for us last night, let me tell you, and they got there. And finally, I want a big, huge hand of applause for all of us in this room. 804 people attended this conference over the entire time, and you were also incredibly engaged, up to the point that I heard that there's one person, one of Allah's interns, of course, who crowdfunded himself here. Elijah, where are you? Has he left? Oh my gosh, he was like, don't call me out. Well, you'll remember him, tall, 16-ish, yeah. Elijah Walters Othman, Elijah Walters Othman, in case, yes, there you are, come on down. Did anybody else get themselves here? Elijah crowdfunded his ticket, and let me tell you, he is a model of action. I've seen you all over the place chatting, so huge round of applause. Yeah, I just wanted to be like, this is what you can do. Get yourself to these conferences if you want to be in this room. You're good. You're welcome.
Oh.
You can sit in the chair right in front of me. And that's also, yeah, when you're in a place you're like, I could totally talk to all of these people. Do it. That's reaching out in action. And finally, I guess I'll take a little bit of moderator's privilege here and close this out, because there are a million ways to close out these kinds of conferences, and often it's just like, whoa, we had so much happen. But I think it's important to acknowledge like how deeply felt a lot of what happened over these 3 days has been. And one of our young people who have been incredible, and I think we've all been excited to see so many young faces at this Global Festival of Ideas, asked me last night, what makes you you? And I couldn't answer her because Mitchell was like rocking that cowbell on Ms. Rhine Fantasy, and I had like a dance imperative going. So I thought for my final thought, I would share with you the answer to that question. And what makes me me, and I may cry, don't be alarmed. It's just like my heart is full and you're all family at this point, so even out there in cyberspace, is that my dad died when I was small, and my mother responded to that by bringing the 4 of us to America and going back to school and raising us basically with the expectation that we were going to go out and make the world better for other people so that they would have the shot that we had, and work as hard to do that as she did to sort of raise us. And I thought about her a lot over these last 3 days. We love you, Mommy. I thought about her a lot over these last 3 days because she grew up on a rice farm in rural Guyana, in a place where poverty, illiteracy, domestic violence, and just hopelessness is still a way of life. And she has managed from there to raise a doctor, an engineer, a lawyer, and me, I'm the scrub really of our family, as we say in America, who have all committed their work to social justice in one way or another. And thinking about this agenda, the reality is the odds of her being able to do that in one generation are as slim as us being able to achieve this agenda by 2030. But the fact of the matter is she did do that. She did do that. And she just decided it had to happen. Because it had to happen, it did happen. And for me, that's what these 17 goals, this agenda, this people's agenda represents. We're going to do it because we have to do it. There is no other option. We will accept no less. It's like, to quote Yoda, do or do not. There is no try. And because you got to get Star Wars in there if you can. So I am just really excited to see what comes out of this and what comes out of all the conversations that we are having. I'm excited for you to get your DHL postcards in a year and figure out if you've met your commitments. I hope you all have. I know I will do my best to do that. And I just think what's coming ahead is going to be hard, but I think what we've seen, certainly at home, but around the world, is that for every valley there's a peak. And I am just so confident that 2030 is going to bring only the best things. And you guys have given me incredible hope. And I hope that continues for all of you as you leave this room. So go, be good, be amazing, and let's do this.